crazy amount in your head. Where does analytics go from here in football, as opposed to obviously baseball? You know, it's in a whole different world. But for football, is our analytics, I guess, at a point where we're just tapping into it, and over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it'll be becoming more of a major part of scouting? Or do you have to separate them into two boxes and essentially say, we can use this for a certain part of scouting, but it can't make up the entire evaluation of the player?
I want to start off. It's not the entire evaluation. On a serious note, scouting and analytics need to go hand in hand, but I don't even think that that's a fair way to put it, because since the beginning of time, since as long as I've been learning about football and I read football scouting methods, tendency reports have been a part of this game. We've always cared about tendencies. Since before I was born and years before that, we all tried to analyze tendencies, and anybody that's ever coached a football game has tried to involve data. You didn't call it data, maybe you didn't call it analytics, but that's how you put together game plans. That's what game plans are. That's what scouting reports are. They're data. So all we're trying to do with analytics is find a better way to organize it all for us, right? So that we can organize this and we can say, oh man, this Bill Gates built Microsoft based on this analytics thing and figuring out how this could help build a company. Maybe we should incorporate a little bit of that. And just like we see in every business across the United States, across the world, analytics is becoming more a part of it. It's a scary word, but all that is saying we're organizing the information a little bit better, and we're drawing a little bit better predictive value out of that data. But at the end of the day, and baseball made this mistake in the 90s, analytics can't take scouts out of the game. You can't replace the work of scouts. You need experts on football that at the end of the day need to make the decisions. Analytics is a great tool. I don't know a scout that doesn't love being able to just plug in their Exos and say, okay, I'm going to go to the SIS data hub, show me every time this player was targeted, and when he had cover one against him or whatever else it was, when he was lined up in the left slot, show me that cut up. That's helpful. That helps us all do our work more efficiently. Now, it doesn't replace that. I'm going to watch the full game to see how does he block when he's off the ball, what's his body language like, the other things that are really important in scouting, the personal characteristics that oftentimes are going to dictate whether or not you can be a success in the league. But the analytics is a tool that can help us, and that it can help us anchor some of our decision making to reduce risk. So for an example of that, basically, you might have a conviction about a player, and hopefully you have a consensus in your scouting department. I've never seen a scouting department have a consensus and then make a bad draft pick, not in any of the drafts that I've been involved with. But then when you can add the consensus to that you have some analytics that says, you know what, guys, you don't just have a hunch here. There's some historical data that backs up that this is probably a good decision, or that says, maybe we should question this a little bit more before we go down that road. Man, that's valuable.
All right, now the coaching side of me comes out. I think when you're at Alabama and you have 22 players to do in a day, and the next day you're at Mississippi State and you have 15, you can't worry about analytics. You got to go through the film, and you got to, at the end of the day, do you like the guy or don't you like the guy? Now, maybe later on, or maybe in the front office, they can do the thing with the analytics. But when you're on the road as a scout, you have very little time to think about how this guy fits analytically into the NFL. Now, after time, and you kind of know the height, weight, speed you're looking for, putting that in the analytics spot, then yeah, you're making a decision, where is he going to fit on your team based on that. But I think on the road as an area scout, the last thing you want to do is think about analytics when you're writing that report. Because you just want to say, what is a guy like as a football player? And I know a good lesson for me that I learned that I shared with James, the last year and a half, I haven't had access to all those analytics that I had access to for 15 years. And I just had to rely on the film that I had. I didn't have any numbers, I didn't know where he was, how this, all I had was a film. And I think my reports have been pretty good, because I've just gone back to just pure scouting. What does the film tell me? Not what do these numbers tell me, or what should this guy be based on, well, he only runs 4.6. Because there are some pretty dang good corners that do run 4.6, because they're playmakers, and you can't teach playmaking. But the analytics will tell you, too, that if the corners that make the most plays on the ball, that's where we're at. That's one number we always use. The corners that make plays on the balls are the corners that play, same with safeties. because those guys usually have pretty good instincts. That's one thing it tells you. So yeah, the analytics are there, but I think more than anything, they're later in the draft. They're trying to make a decision between player A and player B, or sort out this group of 5 players, and for the guys higher up the food chain, and not the area scouts is where I see them coming in.
Y'all covered a lot of ground. The only thing I would say is, growing up as a scout, one thing that a lot of older scouts would say was, you want to build a team, not just collect talent. So with that being said, you know, I agree with Matt. Like, I believe the analytics are absolutely a tool that can help to kind of right the ship a little bit. Maybe there's a guy you don't like so much, but the analytics say, hey, you know, maybe you ought to take another look at this dude because he has X, Y, and Z. So there may be a little bit more there that maybe you're overlooking, or it can happen the other way. But at the end of the day, I tend to believe that the bodies are buried on the tape. I think if you do the work, you watch the tape, you study it. You can't just watch it. You've got to study it. You got to understand that, like, you're going to learn about the person. You're going to talk to people and they're going to tell you about the person. But some of that stuff comes out on the tape too. So I do like the analytics because it can, you know, all of us will get a little bit out of tune every now and again, and it kind of get you back in line. And maybe there's a guy you miss that maybe it gives you a little bit of a clue on that something's there. So I would say it's a good tool, but it's definitely not the be all end all in my mind. But I think it is necessary.
Can I add one thing? Sure. One thing I wanted to add is, I think a lot of times we think of analytics as combine numbers, or we think about it in terms of production in a football game. You know, how many yards did you have, stuff like that. These are what I like to call crap analytics. And my favorite analytic is actually what I would call scouting analytics. And teams do a great job, and every scouting department gets trained on their own scouting scale so well. And I know that if I would talk to somebody that I worked with in New Orleans, and I could be talking about how good I thought my fast food lunch was, or how well I thought the outside linebacker can play in a 3-4 scheme. And if I say a 6, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's it. We just set a whole page of reading notes on the guy, just in one word, or on the food in just one word. And so that scouting scale, those scouting numbers that you're rating these characteristics, it's not necessarily how we think of analytics a lot of times. But to the point before, as we get down the road in the process, if you're scouting and you're sitting there watching the film and you're thinking, oh wow, man, he's going to run fast, so I better give him a higher grade than I think I should, you're going to be a bad scout. You better grade the guy on how well he plays football. That said, if we get a bunch of grades about how well the guy plays football, and then we combine those with some combine numbers, and then we combine those with some production numbers, now we're onto something, and that's where it helps in that decision-making realm.